Okay, hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a 2024 recap of the books that I read. Okay, so the first book that I read is Six of Crows. This is a reread, and I wanted to read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdoms, and I got halfway through Crooked Kingdoms and stopped reading. Now, because I didn't love it, I was just drawn to something else. So I think Six of Crows is an amazing book. I think it deserves the hype. If you do decide to pick up this book, one of the things is I would say the beginning is slow, which can definitely be hard for some readers to get into. I remember when I was reading it for the first time, it was definitely hard for me to get into, but this is actually my third reread of Six of Crows. So I really like this book. I would give it like a 4 out of 5. Okay, the next is Bloody Heart and Broken Vow. These are Sophie Lark's Brutal Birthright series, and these are the last ones. So on the back you can see I've read all of these, and these were the last two. I own 4 of these. One I do not own, but I did read. So I think these books are actually pretty bad. I really like them though. There's a distinction between a book that is good and I like and a book that is bad and I like. So these are really fast-paced reads. It's a mafia romance, and I just really like these. Or I don't know if really liked, but these are like a solid maybe like 2 or 3 out of 5. I think good enough to read, but I know a lot of people won't like them, and that's also valid. I definitely did not like the second in the series, Stolen Air, because it was kind of creepy. But these two, I liked and I read through. Okay, so the next book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is the second time I've read this book, and I really love this. I have it tabbed down here. I think this book is very inspiring, which I don't feel a lot of books are. There are lots of books that I really like, and they're thought-provoking, but I feel like this one inspires me to reach for my goals more, and I really appreciate that. It reads kind of like gossip, like celebrity gossip, and I can really be engaged with that. I really like that part. And it's fast-paced, but it's also very heartfelt. So I would recommend this one. I would say a 4 out of 5. Okay, Icebreaker. As you can see, I am a victim of TikTok, of BookTok. I really actually like BookTok books, and I do buy them because they a lot of the times turn out to be good. I personally like them. So Icebreaker is one of the books that it has a lot of controversy around it. A lot of people don't like Icebreaker, and that's valid for them. But for me, I personally really liked this book. Specifically, one reason that I liked this book so much is because I think in romances, a lot of people get it wrong, where they have romances and then people are kind of toxic to each other, and then they make it up as, oh, people in love are kind of mean to each other sometimes, but it's okay because they're in love. This didn't do that, and I really appreciated that. This book, both characters never did anything that was like really terrible, and their relationship is healthy, and they work together as a team. I will say it's not the most like obviously like realistic book, but I enjoyed it, and it is something that I'd read again. 4 out of 5. Okay, so the next book I read is Ready Player One. I have a single tab. I don't know why. But this is a book I read for a readathon. Me and my friend did a 12-hour readathon, and this is the book that I read. It was definitely hard to do 12 hours of reading. I would do a readathon again, though. Anyways, I enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I would. I'm usually not a sci-fi person, but I thought this was a really good, fun novel, and the movie does not do it justice. The movie is good in its own right, but it is not a good representation of what happens in the book. And I think another thing that's good is, in general, sci-fi has a good reputation of pointing out flaws in society, and I think this book is no different. I think it has some very important criticisms of our modern society. So I would definitely recommend you give this a read. I give it like a 3 out of 5. Okay, so for the rest of the books, I'm not going to have physical copies because halfway through the year, I got me a Kindle, and I love it. I love my Kindle. I love my Kindle more than anything, but a lot of my books were physical, A lot of my books were digital and they were borrowed, so I can't even show you on my Kindle, unfortunately. So the next books I read Heartstopper 1 and 2. They are very, very fast reads for me. They take me like maybe a day max, which isn't a bad thing, but it is something to note. I personally would probably not physically buy these books, but I think they're worth borrowing from the library. And I'm actually on hold for Heartstopper number 3. I think I give them maybe like a 3 or a 4 out of 5, maybe 3.5 out of 5, because the show does a really good job of adapting it. It is pretty much exactly the same thing in the show and in the books. I really love the show, so I thought I'd like the books, and I do, but there isn't much differentiation between the books and the show. So if you see the show, you've read the books. Okay, the next thing I have is The Sun is Also a Star. This was a wonderful book. This is also the second time I read this one. I had somebody in my life that reminded me of one of the characters, and so I wanted to give it a reread, and I really enjoyed it. Overall, I think Nicola Yoon does a great job of having the characters fall in love in a day without making it like too unrealistic or making it too like forced. I think their relationship develops really understandably, and I like that it has kind of a sad, happy ending. I would give this like a 5 out of 5. Okay, so the next 2 books are books I had to read for school. The first was Candide. This is a classic novel, and it's not something that I would probably ever read on my own. I had to read a lot of difficult texts for my literature class, and I liked it, but not enough that I would ever read it on my own or I would read it again. If you're going into reading this, it's very violent and graphic and kind of horrifying, and the author does that on purpose, but it's not something that I think a modern reader would really enjoy. The next is Notes from the Underground. This is also not a book that I would recommend to the modern reader. Unfortunately, because my class was fast-paced, I did not have the time to dissect the book properly, and I think I would have enjoyed it more given the time to really look into it, because Russian literature tends to be very lengthy and very preachy, and a lot of times it doesn't tell you things straightforward. So I would have liked more time to analyze the novel, but overall it's not something a modern reader or a casual reader would be interested in. Okay, so the next is The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks, and this is another book the second time I'm reading it, and I really loved it. Again, I think he does a wonderful job of encapsulating like the beauty of nature. I almost get naturalism from his novels, but also what love is and what young love is and the heartache of growing old together. And the ending is very tragic, and it is one of the saddest books that I think I've read, and I love that about it. Okay, so the next is My Life with the Walter Boys. This is a TV show on Netflix that I saw first, and then I picked up the book. The book and the TV show share some resemblance, but there is a difference. So I think even if you've seen the show, it is worth reading the book also, and I am definitely interested in reading the next in the series. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But it wasn't perfect, so I would give it maybe like a 3 out of 5. So the next is The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I have physical, and then It's Not Summer Without You, which I borrowed digitally. So I liked both of these books. I don't think that they were the best. I think the writer writes kind of immaturely. I also think that is a choice. I think that is characterization. I don't think it's bad characterization, but it's not something that I really love. Overall, I did like these books enough to read them, and I want to read the third book, and I have it on hold at the library. And they do a really good job about encapsulating kind of summer, and I think that's what I really appreciate about the books. I really do also love summer, and reading them makes me feel like summer. But I would probably give them a 2 out of 5. The next is History Is All You Left Me, which is a book I read all the way through, and I think is okay. It was not the best book, I will say. I really definitely had some difficulties with the plot. I think there's some parts that are really weird, to say the least. I don't think that necessarily It's terrible for a book to have some things that are maybe not mainstream, but it is not something that I would read again or recommend to anyone. There are some lines that are really good, but overall, I just didn't really enjoy this book. I give it a 1 out of 5. Next is The Unthinkable Thoughts of Jacob Green. I thought this was a wonderful book. 5 out of 5. It encapsulates what it is to live with a narcissist. It's about a boy who is Jewish, and he goes to temple, and he is pushed by his father to become better. There's not one overarching plot. It is just the boy going through life. Okay, the last book that I read of 2024 was A Court of Thorns and Roses. Again, another TikTok book that I was going into thinking I wasn't going to like, or it was going to be bad. I've heard a lot of people say that it is solely smut in the novels, but that is not what I found. I think the Brutal Birthright series has a lot more of that in it than A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I am really interested in reading the next several books, and I plan to this year. I am on hold at the library for the next book in the series, but I really enjoyed it. I think the protagonist is really strong, and I honestly haven't seen female characters be that strong in many other novels. She is strong both emotionally and physically, and I think that's really inspiring. I think her dedication to her family is important, and I think that while the romance between the characters may not be the healthiest or the most realistic, I think that it is a sweet story to read, and I enjoyed it a lot. I read it very quickly, within a couple of days, and I definitely want to read the next one. So that's the end of my 2024 book recap. Let me know what you guys are reading for 2025, and I hope to see you next year.